Sorry. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namasami. Dear friends, in reflecting on this theme about the uncertainty of the time of death and the unreliability of life, the fragility of this life that we enjoy. It can put a different aspect of impermanence into a clear view. There's one way that the contemplation of impermanence is not, sometimes people say, well, why would impermanence be connected with dukkha? Because in some ways impermanence can seem to be very pleasant. So if you consider the stately procession of the stars and the celestial objects in the sky, which is ever-changing, but it's doing so in a way which has got this kind of perfect order, then that can seem to be that constant change of the planets is like a thing of tremendous beauty. Or if we happen to be in a nice spot during the sunset or at the time of sunrise, and we notice the sun is going down, the sun is coming up, and this also is part of this kind of stately, orderly, natural procession of the major objects in our universe moving in their pattern. It could even be that when we take the knowledge that the Blessed One had of beings passing away and being reborn according to their karma, and being reborn into the state of life which is related to the actions that they had done before. There's is certainly a way that that knowledge, that one can see the full force of the suffering of the round, of this constant, burdensome, difficult, fraught with danger, this progression through birth and death, as being something that is so tiresome that we just don't want to keep marching around that wheel anymore. But then, in another way, when one has a certain distance from it and is observing, it's just sort of like from a God's eye point of view, looking down on all of the sentient beings and seeing how they're born and pass away and born and pass away. It could have a kind of a manifestation of the natural order of things, and because it's orderly and lawful in that way, it has a certain kind of beauty to it. But the death of an individual only in, I think, perhaps a not very common state where someone has got a blessed life, that they are um, really good in their practice and their wisdom and their circumstances, and have taken the right steps to prepare, that then a person can live the span of time that's natural for a human to live, whether that should be 90 years or 100 years. They live out their entire lifespan, and then they observe the gradual breaking up of the body and the life process during the last period of their life, and prepare for that, and go off into the sunset in a kind of a peaceful, calm, beautiful, and spiritual way. That would be what you'd call a good death. But it's also so true that perhaps even most of the time, death strikes us unexpectedly, like a kind of a catastrophe. If it's a death of a child or death of a young person in their prime of life who has not had the opportunity of living out that full lifespan, it can strike the heart as being something that's quite catastrophic. Or if the death is coming out as a result of some tragedy, because of a sudden illness, or because of a war, or an act of violence, or a suicide, or something like that, then those kinds of deaths could strike all those who are touched by it as something terrible and out of order and incorrect and not really the way it's supposed to be. So in this way, it's perhaps more common than not that death doesn't come at the right time, and it doesn't come in the perfect way. Maybe death is like criticism. It's possible to give a very beautiful, perfect criticism that's given in exactly the right way and in exactly the right time. But so often, for the ordinary person who's not so completely skillful in their speech or in their hearing, the criticism is like unwanted. It's always the wrong time, the wrong way, never perfect. It's always not what it should be. And just the same way that then the death, our own death, or the death of our loved ones, or the people whose lives we touch, can seem so easily to be something that's a kind of a mistake, or a disruption, something difficult. So it seems that in one way, the Buddha wanted us to honestly confront the way in which death is horrible and horrifying and frightening and painful. In another way, when the Buddha taught us to consider about how death is universal, how death comes to everyone, it's almost as if he's guiding us to come out of that condition of being emotionally reactive or emotionally overturned, falling into unskillful weeping and wailing and moaning and groaning about death, and instead to have a balanced and a wise perspective on death by conceptualizing it in a much wider conceptual framework. So then, if we see everything that arises has the nature to cease, all beings that are born have the nature to die. And if we really fully know and integrate this as a universal law, then when we encounter the death of any individual being, or the death of many beings, or the death of all the beings, we're seeing it as a manifestation of this universal law. So in that way, death is, the change of death is perhaps more similar to the progression of the stars and planets through the night sky, just following their pattern according to their own law. It seems to me that the one particular aspect of craving, which is the bhava tanha, the craving for existence, that's the craving which is the most relevantly affected by this contemplation of death. If we want to overcome the craving for existence, then having the eye open and really seeing how this universal law and all of the accidental diversity of the ways in which beings can die, that to whatever extent that we have that craving for existence, to that extent we will suffer and fall into unskillful reacting, weeping and wailing and moaning and groaning when we encounter death, because we have not yet taken care of releasing and letting go and coming out of that craving for existence. But when we've completed the work as far as that craving for existence, then one way that we know that we've completed that work, that we've done that work, is exactly because when we are touched by death, that disturbance doesn't come along. And instead, we experience calmness. A lot of the teachings about death are given in a context of karma, which is every bit as much a universal law as the way the stars move around through the night sky. So in terms of that awareness of karma, there's this idea that whatever unskillful deeds, unwholesome deeds, lead to a painful result, and the skillful or virtuous deeds leads to a happy result. And so that beings who are caught up in whatever's unskillful, that you're then being swept into this vortex, into a painful rebirth. this kind of teaching should be sufficient to motivate us to do a big part of the work that we should be doing in terms of the purification of the heart and taming those psychological habits, or the habits of the mind, the habits of the heart, which support unskillful deeds. So even before we are yet able to come to the opening of the Dhamma eye and really cognizing about impermanence and non-self, that preliminary work can be done based on an appreciation of karma. But then there's the much more when the Dhamma eye is opened, and when we see that existence itself is so unstable, and there's so much potential for dukkha because of the ways that the mind is so powerfully attached and drawn to being attached to different aspects of existence. So then, even being a monastic and only having one robe to wear, if, say, by mistake, one of my colleagues took my robe, and then I feel, if I was to feel distress about that, in a way, it's a manifestation of this craving for existence, that we have a habit, we have so many habits, the mind is filled with so many habits, and we just want things to keep going on and on in their habitual way. And if those habits stop working, it's like, you're expecting to be on level ground, but instead you stepped off the edge of a cliff or off of a staircase, and you don't find the solid ground where you try to place your foot on the solid ground, but the solid ground is not there, and you're falling. And so then that's the kind of sense of a disturbance, and it's the same kind of disturbance that you would experience if you were not prepared for the inevitability of death. If you didn't realize that life could be taken at any time, and then you find your own life is being cut short ahead of time, when it's kind of like too short, too soon. You're not yet ready. You haven't finished your work yet, or you could find that a parent has that their child dies, or a young married person finds that their spouse dies while they're still young and they haven't completed, doing the whole cycle of their family life. So it can be just like this when the any one of the probably millions of different little aspects of the habitual things that we expect for life to be predictable, to be what we expected it to be. But then if we can realize the depth of the amount of uncertainty and become contented and comfortable with more and more profound levels of uncertainty because of not clinging to any kind of wish for it to be in a certain kind of a way, then we can have this, you sometimes see this really beautiful spiritual quality in persons who are very good Dhamma practitioners. And when life throws a curveball, or where this situation turns out the opposite of what was expected, that they're just not disturbed. There's no disturbance happening at all. And when we have that experience of not being disturbed whenever our expectations are not satisfied, then we could know that we have let go of this craving for existence. And stepping back again to the meditation on death, other kinds of meditation about impermanence in a certain way don't necessarily do the job in forcing us to realize the extent to which we need to let go, because we can sort of normalize other kinds of impermanence, like what goes up comes down, and things go and they come back, and day fell last night, and there's so many different aspects of impermanence that we can kind of get adjusted to, get used to, so we don't feel the shock value, or we don't see that creates any necessity for the realization of the wisdom. What the Buddha pointed to, he said, is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent. Is that which is impermanent sukha, happiness, or dukkha? It's dukkha. And because it's impermanent, and because it's dukkha, then you wouldn't want to make that a self. Meaning you wouldn't want to depend on it. You wouldn't want to cling to it. You wouldn't want to rely on it. A Pali word is viparinama. Viparinama. In that passage about the three marks of existence, the Buddha says is that which is impermanent, viparinama, and dukkha, worthy to be called a self. And you say, no, it's not worthy to be called a self. So viparinama is a word for change, but it means bad change, like a disappointment, or things are going downhill, things are falling apart. There's a related word called utuparinama, which is a change in the weather. But it doesn't just mean the weather changes in a nice way. It means the change in the weather, like climate change, or like disastrous weather change. Like when the cyclone blows and it destroys your entire village. That's the utuparinama, catastrophic changes in the weather. So the viparinama is the catastrophic change. And so this contemplation of death is the strong medicine that makes us face up to this catastrophic aspect of change, of impermanence, so that then we have the realization that we can't cling to anything, because all of it is going to be taken away. And then when we don't cling to anything, then we may find that another door opens that is for the Dhamma eye, and we can attain that state that this no change is creating any disturbance, and the mind is not seeking to find a safe perch, a safe station, safe position where it can cling to something and stay. Instead, when we step and we find instead of the solid ground beneath our foot, we find that it's air, open air, that there's not any disturbance whatsoever because we have no expectations. This is, to me, the benefit or the gain of this contemplation of death in the aspect of death being so unpredictable, something that could land on us at any time. So this is what I had to say, and I am leaving 15 minutes. No, I'm leaving, I keep forgetting that the group of the what goes longer. Well, as long as you like. I'd be very happy to hear your thoughts about how this contemplation of death is helpful to you, what changes for you in terms of your wisdom from the contemplation of death, and or any questions you may have. If anybody has a comment or a question, welcome to put the hands in Anjali, and I will call on you. Okay, I'm calling on Damon.
Yeah, I'll get the ball rolling here. I'm sure there is a lot to be said by many. Mostly the death contemplation and the awareness this month. I would like to, you and I have talked a lot privately about my fear of death. And I think the takeaway tonight is that to the extent that one can weaken the clinging to a permanent self, then death becomes, I believe for me, it will be much less intimidating. So could you recap some practices on how to not cling to self, to the idea of a permanent self? I know we can meditate. That's number one. And then I'll leave the rest to you.
To my understanding, one of the strongest, the two very strong practices for defeating the self or the self-delusion is contemplating about the five aggregates in terms of an investigation to see whether these phenomena are staying the same or whether they're changing. So then, the body, the feeling, the volitional perceptions, and the form, the body, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. So you could both see how the mental side of these things is something that we identify with, which is contributing towards throwing up the delusion of self. Like if somebody is, when you feel a certain way and you feel like you have to do something because of the feeling. And that then you can very easily like analyze. So, okay, what is being protected there? Why was I so reactive? Why is a painful feeling something that we have to get away from? Why is a pleasant feeling something that we want to get? And it's because of the way that the mind is gathering these things up into the concept of a self and trying to find a safe place for the self. So investigation about the five aggregates is one, a very powerful practice both in the sense of their impermanence and in the sense of the psychology of how the self got fabricated, that how the aggregates work together is a big insight into how an individual fabricates a delusion about the self. And when you understand how it's been fabricated, then you can find ways to dismantle it or take parts of it away. Then the second great contemplation for that is about the senses, the six senses, how the internal sense base, the corresponding object, and the corresponding consciousness can come into contact. This is something that's happening very fast, just at a moment. And then from that contact is arising a Vedana, or a feeling. And then we're sort of off to the races from there in terms of all the other mental processes that follow on from that. But the main thing that's advantageous in really spending time developing that meditation on the six senses and on the contact of the senses is that they are so fast. The rising existence and disappearance of a moment of a sense contact is so fast that just watching it, you can really get a direct experiential knowledge about impermanence. And then when you see impermanence at that level, that everything is just going by so fast, then it's like you can't hold on to anything. The self can't keep up with that because of the speed of the change. So those are two. Okay, I'll mention a third practice for weakening the delusion of self, and that would be if you could please stop being so selfish. I'm not pointing to you individually, but I'm saying that practicing generosity and giving, and being generous not just with things, but being generous about your opinions and being generous in so many different ways, it actually does weaken. When it weakens selfishness, it becomes easier to let go of the delusion of self.
Thank you for those three.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that Damon is acknowledging the connection between the self-delusion and anxiety or fear about death. And I think that, there are many verses in texts in the early Buddhist texts that really show death as being terrifying, that show death as, really something fearful. And so if you realize that connection between the self-delusion and the fear about death, wow, what a powerful and effective medicine that is to motivate you to do the work, to get out of that delusion of self in order to escape from that fear. So that's good. Okay, Richard, I'll call on you.
Thank you. For myself, I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of the painful process of dying. So in the suttas, it's described that if one can master, high levels of jhana, then they don't have to experience the suffering of death. Like Buddha, when he was dying, and he was said like, okay, he's going up through the jhanas and then back down again and up through the jhanas. So if he gets, high enough, like fourth jhana or formless states or something beyond that, right? He can just kind of let go of his body and not experience the pain of death. So in a similar way, I'm noticing now that I'm in my old age, I would say, uh, and and having a number of health issues and things. Um, on a certain level, death is kind of starting to death of this body, right? Or whatever that means, is starting to look like, hey, that's not so bad, I don't have to keep going through all this different problems and difficulties, that the world presents to us. I'm not saying that I'm inclining towards suicide or anything, but I'm just saying that, yeah, if it comes, it comes. But the only thing I'm just not looking forward to is the pain of it. So I hope whatever it is, the process, it's like I like to say, well, I just want to go to bed one night, fall asleep, have a heart attack, and that's it. You know what I mean? So just kind of, no more than maybe like a few minutes of recognition, something strange is going on. But anyways, I think though, in terms of studying the Buddha's teaching and the having to feel like death can come at any moment is simply that let's not waste our time. Let's try to develop ourselves as much as possible, as quickly as we can individually. That's all like an individual matter, right? So that you can either completely attain liberation and enlightenment, or at least get far enough along the path to, like I was saying, at least you won't experience much pain and suffering, at least, with this death. And then don't plan to take human birth again, even if you don't become completely, liberated and enlightened, just don't come back here again. It's really not worth it. It's way too much dukkha. So, anyways, that was kind of I think about all I had to say on the matter at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I should have emphasized at the beginning that this, it's kind of fundamental that the urgency to practice to not waste time, because we know that death. Because we don't know when death will come. I mean, even if we were able to plan it and control it and say, okay, I'm going to die on next Wednesday, then I know that I have got that many hours left to prepare and to do the work. But I don't. None of us has got that choice to say which date, whether it's something that we think is going to be far in the future, or we think that it's going to be close. We don't know, and so we should practice as if we were discussing this on Sunday, I think, as if there was just one breath left, so that then the practicing and the preparation becomes continuous. Pain. Yes, it it can be quite gross and different. The kind of pain that we get to have when we're coming to the end and the body has stopped doing what it's supposed to do. There's a teaching about the Vedana that one trains the mind to see this is not the jhana, it's more like a wisdom or an insight practice to train the mind to see the unpleasant in the pleasant. and to see the pleasant and the unpleasant, and to see the neutral in both, so that then when experiencing a pleasant feeling, you know that when the pleasant feeling finishes, that would be unpleasant. So then you don't get carried away or fooled by the pleasant feeling. And then when you experience an unpleasant feeling, then the cessation of the unpleasant feeling is pleasant. So you can see the pleasant feeling in the unpleasant feeling. And so basically this black and white division that the mind makes between the feelings sort of gets to be questioned, so that we don't necessarily feel that we have to react in a certain way to an unpleasant feeling. This is apart from the practice of experiencing the cessation of the feeling through the five senses in the jhana, especially in the fourth jhana, and the immaterial contemplations. It is certainly true that, like, if you need to go to the dentist and you don't want to have the side effects of the anesthesia, if you could learn the formless meditation, then you wouldn't need to take a pill. You can just go into meditation and have the cavities drilled out that way. Maureen?
Okay. I think the hardest thing is for those of us who are left alive when an unexpected death happens. Because, well, that's in my own experience. That's, to me, those unexpected deaths, it takes you a while to kind of adjust to this person not being there. But for the person who dies, I'm thinking of some sudden deaths that just, it was out of the blue. For them, that was perhaps a good way to go. Without all, well, that's all I wanted to say, really. Yeah. I can remember when I was on rounds, when I was in training, people can be kept alive, and it's when they're quite clearly in the process of dying. And that to me was almost a cruelty. But sometimes it was done so that relatives could get there and see their loved one who perhaps couldn't even really respond to them, but maybe they were subconsciously able to be aware of their child having come to visit them before they died. It was for the benefit of the people who were alive, that the death they went through. Anyway, that was my two pennies on that. Yeah.
Yes, it's certainly true that the unexpected death of a loved one, which is at the wrong time, like the death of a child, is shockingly difficult, and that it can be psychological trauma that does take time to overcome or to process it through. Whereas when it's somebody who's already quite elderly and they've already had their full life and it's their turn to die, and they're, sort of like used to it, then there may be that there would not be that same kind of an experience of a trauma. Although I will say that I have seen in my own experience, it depends in part on how well they've taken care of their relationships. So when an old person or somebody who's a candidate for death has worked out and resolved all of the conflicts and issues in their relationships, then the family can be somewhat at peace after they've passed away. But if there's a lot of unresolved family dynamics, then those relatives that are left behind may be experiencing trauma because of being left holding the bag about those issues. And I think it's very much within the Dhamma to, especially when we have children, to really work to prepare the mind for the dangers that can befall a child or a young person growing up, and to just really do the effort to develop a character that has the courage and wisdom to be with the fact that this tender young child or this beautiful a teenager or a young adult is an independent person. They're going to go out and be in the world, and they're going to do their things, and the disaster could fall on them. But we are not going to be paralyzed with fear and anxiety about it. But instead, by means of doing this meditation, actually, meditating on the death of our loved ones, in order to just get the mind prepared to hold that is a possibility, and that brings so much more freedom into the relationships, right? Yeah. Didn't we? Do you have a share?
Thank you, Aya. I have a question, actually, and you're not the first person I've asked this, but I'm asking different people. I was wondering if you could comment about euthanasia, and because medical doctors and veterinarians, it's quite commonplace to, put down a pet when they're, suffering so much. And it's a common recommendation by vets. And when I did the Maranasati retreat, there was a medical professional, and he was talking about how more and more common it is for people who are, very terminally ill. I think the law is that you can take, you can do euthanasia via pill if you've been given less than 2 months to live. I think it is something, it's, it's a couple months or something like that. And it's not, the first precept is to not kill, but usually that's because it's out of negative intent, right, to harm. And so these practitioners are practicing ending the life out of compassion to end the suffering. Of course, it's also the person who's terminally ill. Pets can't do that, of course. The owners have to make that decision. So I was wondering if you could comment on that from a Buddhist perspective, based on intent and karma.
Well, I would comment that when a person or a being is very close to death, there is something that happens within the body or the nervous system where the pain comes to be not experienced as pain. So there is a natural way in which, and I'm not qualified medically to say exactly when that is, but there is a way that when someone is coming entering into the dying process, that the pain becomes not a factor. And so then it's also true that because of the technology that we have for keeping people alive, or even keeping pets alive, I suppose if we want to apply advanced medication to a pet who is ill, that then it gets into a really, like once the decision is made to use that advanced medication, advanced medicine, in order to try to extend the life as long as possible, then this horrible decision has to be made about when to pull the plug or stop using that advanced medication. So I wouldn't give any recommendation about saying that in some circumstances that euthanasia is proper or correct, but I would say that it's quite good to have an advance directive and to make sure that your doctors and your loved ones know if you wish to avoid using extreme medical interventions to extend your life, especially if there's not an expectation that the quality of life would be much. As far as a person having their life extended so their relatives can travel and meet them, right? And then, what if they live too long, and the relatives have got, 1 week of vacation left or something, but then the elderly parent survives like more than 1 week. They survive 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a whole year, and even for a long time. And then the family is getting into this disrupted situation about providing the caregiving for an extremely ill terminal patient over a long period of time. And so in all of these ways that can get to be quite like ugly, it's like as if once we start to play God in terms of extending people's lives, that some other secular or just not very beautiful factors can come into the decision-making process about it. It is certainly possible, and we know many elders and people who suffer from illness who have chosen to manage their condition and to consciously allow their condition to run its course without doing extraordinary heavy medical interventions. And so that's one of the choices that's possible. You should know that as a monastic, it would be a fault for me to say, oh yes, by all means, it would be good for you to end your life sooner. Or so I can't. I'm quite sure that the Buddha did not recommend that because it's made into a heavy fault for a monk to make that kind of a recommendation. So, oh yes, you've lived too long. You're giving too much trouble to your family. Just pull the plug. No, we don't advise that. So this may be enough for now. I hope this practice is good, and I hope that you will try this approach of alternating meditating for samadhi and meditating for tranquility as the balancing practice, so that one can fully face the death contemplation and have that death awareness be like enveloped in a practice of samadhi, a practice of tranquil meditation, so that then we won't be troubled by a disturbance and agitation. Or if we do, we can take care of ourselves and learn how to sort of like moderate our practice so that we don't become disturbed. And who knows, maybe if we practiced in this way, then when we come to the closer to the end of our life, when the body really is falling apart and we see that objectively the end of our life is near, if we've been practicing to enclose the death meditation into the practice of sama samadhi, or right concentration, that would be able to go there and keep the mind in a very peaceful and skillful place, and not fall into the state that after we've been practicing so well for most of our life, then coming to the final crisis, then we lose our mindfulness. You don't want to do that. You hope that you'll be able to keep your mindfulness and keep your tranquility, even when you're coming up and approaching the final crisis of your life, which would be the body falling apart before you die.